Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and I have in hand some of the brand new June 1st LEGO Star Wars sets releasing very soon. Now this is a really fun video I wanted to get out as soon as possible because I actually got an email from LEGO saying I could post reviews as soon as the sets arrive at my home. Well, the sets came in about an hour ago and I've built them, reviewed them, and put together this video for all of you to enjoy a very early review of the brand new LEGO Star Wars U-Wing, Darth Maul Mech, Night Trooper and Death Trooper Battle Pack, and Plo Koon's Jedi Starfighter Microfighter. Let's jump into this early review right now. Alright, so here is a look at the June 1st wave of LEGO Star Wars sets, and this is a pretty eclectic one. You have a U-Wing from Star Wars Andor Season 2, you have a set based on Ahsoka Season 1 with the Death Trooper and Night Trooper Battle Pack, you've got a Darth Maul Mech, which isn't really based off of anything, although the Maul is of course from the Clone Wars, and then you also have a Clone Wars / Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith style set in the form of Plo Koon's Jedi Starfighter Microfighter. Altogether, this is one of the smallest Star Wars waves we've gotten so far, and the focus is pretty split on different pieces of media from across Star Wars history, which I actually really like. I like that they're doing a lot of different interesting things with the sets. Basically, only one of the sets is like a standard minifigure scale vehicle, and the rest of them are either a battle pack, a mech that isn't canon, or a microfighter. And there's a lot to love here. I'm going to start off by taking a look at the U-Wing Starfighter because that is the largest of the wave. For 594 pieces, this retails for $70 US, 60 British pounds or 70 euros, and it comes with 4 minifigs, Cassian Andor, Dedra Meero, an ISB tactical agent, and making a triumphant return for the first time since 2016's Rogue One, K2SO. Now, as far as the ship itself, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. It's decidedly smaller than the original version that we got back for Rogue One, and it's missing a lot of the key functionality of the U-Wing. It's following along the modern LEGO design principles of maximizing the detail and making sets a little bit more compact as a result, but making sure they are extremely stable, and sometimes to a fault. You could drop this thing and pretty much nothing is going to fall off of it, but because of that, a lot of the pieces go into making it incredibly stable, which is basically what a lot of Star Wars ships are starting to feel like nowadays. They're a lot smaller than they used to be, but they're just a lot more compact and stable, and this feels like a very interesting status shift from what LEGO used to be doing just a few years ago, which was really trying to maximize the size of models and really not caring too much about the stability. And it's interesting seeing how that shifted in one direction and one extreme, all the way back in 2006 era, and then going to today where it's almost at the other extreme, especially for LEGO Star Wars. But that being said, the detail is pretty nice when it is present. I really do like the build for the engines. It's making use of some newer style of elements to have the circular elements be captured the exact way they need to be, and you also have a really nice build on the side which showcases a window. It's just studs on the side using the transparent clear elements for a slit to look out of, and there's nowhere near as much space as there used to be to actually mount minifigures or actual gun mounting systems on the inside of the U-Wing, but I think it does get the job done just okay. The only downside is it really only includes 2 minifigures that make sense to include here, either Cassian or K2SO, and K2SO doesn't really fit standing on that platform. You kinda just have to throw him in there, and I really would have appreciated just one more minifigure, maybe like Big Scalene or somebody like that who's a crucial character in the show, which would actually make sense to include on the inside of the U-Wing. The front cockpit element right here unfortunately does not connect to the canopy. The way the ship works in universe is that you can look up and below you, and that's why there's the bottom window and windscreen on the underside of the ship, but honestly that's really just for display. You can't even fit a single minifigure in there, and once closed, it's basically impossible to open up without taking part of it apart. That being said, the ship does retain the U-Wing functionality of having the wings spread out, and this is a lot of fun. It is remarkably swishable, especially when the wings are fully deployed, and I cannot wait to just hang this from the ceiling because it is just a really fun model to play around with. There's all sorts of things that you can do with swishing it around, and I really do like the detail that is factored into even the shapes of the wings, where they have these different colored slits and pieces here and there brick built into it, which really allow you to just see what it might look like when the wings are unfurled, and then of course you can lock in the S-foils into attack position, and then you can still fly it around like so. The ship itself is very swooshable. The proportions are pretty good compared to the actual vessel in the show and in the original Rogue One movie, and it is very nice to get this one, which is almost 10 years after Rogue One, which is remarkable. I cannot believe it has been almost 10 years since that movie. It feels like just yesterday, but it is very cool to be able to see the LEGO just try to attempt this one more time in the modern style. But with that, we do have to talk a little bit about value here. This retails for $70 US, but the ship in my hand does not really feel like a $70 US item. At best, it feels closer to maybe 55 or 60 tops, and especially when you look at the piece count with 594 pieces, I feel like having it be priced at $60 would have just been so much more fair. Maybe at $70 if they had included a couple more exclusive minifigures or just something to make it feel a bit more special, like making it larger, that would have been better, but as it is right now, it does feel a little bit overpriced. Taking a look at the aforementioned minifigures though, I do think the quality of all these minifigures is pretty well done. Cassian Andor is really remarkably detailed, and I really do appreciate that they included the newer style of skin tone for him, which really matches the on-screen counterpart. You've got an alternate expression where he's almost smirking, perhaps he's talking to Bix there, and then a more serious expression where he just looks very angry and serious in his dedication to the fight against the Empire, which looks pretty good. K2SO actually is a returning character, which we haven't seen for years, but the thing is, they've pretty much remolded the entire way they have built up his body. The legs are completely different because they are utilizing the new mold they introduced for the upgraded Super Battle Droid legs, which we just got last year, and then of course you have a newer style of mold for the torso and head. It's very similar to the original mold, but the printing is very different. There's just a bit more detail factored into the chest and a little bit less weathering as well on the side of the head, which makes sense. Moving onwards, we have a remarkably really accurate version of Dedra Meero, who is one of those characters I honestly wasn't really sure if we were going to get depicted as a LEGO minifigure, as a secondary antagonist, but I think it's really well done. I love the fact that they actually went the extra effort to introducing a specialized dual molded component with the hairpiece and the hat combo, which is really cool. We've gotten that before for minifigures like Rey Sloane, but it is nice to see it colored in her hair color, and the only downside to this minifigure is the legs really should have been dual molded. I don't really know why the legs aren't dual molded here. You can see the white print just isn't quite right on the black legs, and that is a bit unfortunate. Moving on from that, we have just a generic ISB tactical agent, and this one is probably one of the least interesting minifigs of the set. I do like that it does include the riot shield, and the printing is decent enough. It's kind of like another variation of a Stormtrooper style minifigure, but honestly, there's just not much going on with this one, so we can move on. Overall, I'm fairly happy with the U-Wing. I gotta say, I prefer the older one though. The older one was just a lot bigger. I felt like the minifigure selection was more interesting, obviously because it was based off of Rogue One. It had some alien characters and more unique elements being introduced, and I just felt like it was more substantial of a build. But this is nice if you missed out on the older one, but I do have to wonder if LEGO is taking things in too far into the wrong direction by making things so stable that they're way too small. But with that, let's move on to the next set, and that one is 75411 Darth Maul Mech. Now this is a pretty interesting one because it is continuing the mech sub-theme. It unfortunately retails for $18 US, 15 euros, or 13 British pounds, with the US absolutely getting the short end of the stick when it comes to pricing. I remember when these mechs were closer to $10 as opposed to $20. It only includes one minifigure, Darth Maul, and comes with 143 pieces, as well as two of those large lightsaber blades which they've used to build up the lightsaber for the mech. I honestly probably have the least to say about this set and the microfighter because it is basically just a standard mech style of build. It is just utilizing the Ninjago Evo elements, so no articulation in the legs or elbows, but they have done that explicitly to make it easier for kids to play with these and pose them, and I actually do really like the detail included on the build for the legs and the arms. They could have just made a generic sort of Sith robe for him, but I really like how this is specifically tailored off of an outfit that he's worn in the Clone Wars, where you've got the two different claws on the front of his feet. You can see they are the mechanical limbs. You've got some of the black and red details for his upper arms, but then he's wearing some gauntlets on the side of his wrists. and you even have like a bare chest of the mech, showcasing the tattoos on the front of his torso as a print on one of the tiles for the front of the mech itself. It's a really interesting model and definitely something that I think will be fun for kids to play with, but honestly, for the diehard Star Wars fans, I definitely feel like they probably would have preferred something a little bit more accurate to what you would see in the movies or the shows. Although, I will say this is probably just not meant for those people. This is meant for kids to have fun, and I absolutely know if I were a kid wanting to play with a mech of a favorite LEGO Star Wars characters, I would absolutely love this. I would want them to make them for all sorts of characters like Captain Rex or Commander Cody and all my favorite characters, maybe even a Fives mech, so I definitely see that this is something that could really work for kids, and I like the amount of detail that makes it stand apart from other mechs, like the addition of the probe droids, the dual-bladed lightsaber, and of course the detailed brick built into the legs and arms. The Darth Maul minifigure, on the other hand, is pretty much just one that we have seen before. It has those mechanical legs printed on, you've got the Clone Wars style robe, and somewhat frustratingly he has the pupilless eyes, which is based on a whole series of decisions the LEGO Star Wars team made to essentially homogenize the way that all minifigure details are printed, but then again they kind of break their own rules when it comes to other themes, so I kind of feel like it would have been totally okay to print pupils here, but I think it looks okay for what it is. It's not that big of a deal. Moving onwards, we have another small set here before we get to the battle pack, and this is 75400 Plo Koons, Jedi Starfighter Microfighter, retailing for $15 US, 13 British pounds, or 15 euros. It comes technically with, I would say, 2.5 minifigures, one of which being a new version of Plo Koon, which is really exciting, as well as R7-D4, but only the head. So it is nice to get a new version of it, but you don't have the associated body to go with him, which makes sense in a microfighter. The microfighter itself is pretty decent. I really like how sleek it feels. It actually does capture the shaping of the set really nicely. You've got a nice pattern along the wings of the dark blue and white, and technically I guess you can kind of pair this with the ARC 170 ship from earlier this year and make it a bit of an Order 66 style of set, which makes it even sadder that they're shooting down such a tiny chibi ship. Moving on though, I do want to focus in on the Plo Koon minifigure, which is by far the most exciting thing about the set. They have gone ahead and introduced a brand new mold for Plo Koon, which I think was absolutely long overdue. The previous mold was alright, and I do have a lot of nostalgia for how that looked, but one of my biggest problems with it was that since it was rubberized and then printed, it was really easy for the gray print on the two prongs of his mask to just rub off. And this time they've created a brand new dual molded component with the mask and eyes in gunmetal gray, which just looks so much cooler than the original. I think it is a massive improvement. I'm sure fans who want to stick to the classic and nostalgic design would just want them to bring that part back, but I think that this is honestly an improvement in pretty much every single way. It looks very close to how he appears in the movies, so this totally works for a movie version as well, and I just love the shaping of the head itself. It's just a really great minifig. Moving on from Plo Koon, we can take a look at the final set of this relatively small wave, and that is 75412 Death Trooper and Night Trooper Battle Pack, which retails for $23 US, 20 euros, or 18 British pounds, and comes with 119 pieces, and 2 Night Troopers as well as 2 Death Troopers. The build itself is very simple, but I actually kinda like the aesthetics of it. It's got these adjustable fins to allow it to hover above the ground. It really reminds me of some of the transport pods that we had seen the original Stormtrooper Battle Pack come in, and I think it is a pretty Star Wars-y looking vehicle. I could totally see it fitting into the universe. But of course, much like every Battle Pack, the focus here is on the minifigs. Unfortunately, it is $23, so the minifigs better be good. And I will say they are pretty good. You have 2 identical Death Troopers, but of course they are the zombified versions of the Death Troopers, and then of course you have 2 just standard Night Troopers as well, but with different prints for the torso and a different helmet on one of them, which is really cool. My favorite of these minifigures is probably either the Death Trooper, just kind of having that be a specialized part gold, part black design, or this version of the Night Trooper because I really love the gunmetal gray helmet. It feels so unique compared to what we've seen in Star Wars since, and it really does fit what we've seen in the show, with some of the troopers having gray helmets as opposed to white, maybe due to wear or rust or the metal kind of showing through. Whatever it is, I just think it is super cool how they have that style of design. The Death Trooper itself is a nice minifig to get. It would have been really cool to get just a regular Death Trooper, especially since we haven't gotten a standard one in a long time, but they did, I guess, resurrect the mold for this particular minifig because we haven't seen a Death Trooper in a long time, so I'm sure that they have something planned maybe in the future. Next year, after all, is the 10th anniversary of Rogue One, so we might be seeing some Rogue One sets next year. That's just a complete guess, but that might be why they've brought back the Death Trooper helmet mold for this, and then they can use it for next year. The other Night Trooper is pretty much the same as the one included in the Battle on Peridia set that we got last year, but it is good to finally be able to army build these, especially because that set was one of the larger ones, so it was pretty difficult to army build based on that set alone, and I'm really glad they included these in a battle pack. Overall, I never can be fully happy with $23 for a battle pack, especially given that we just got a really fantastic Clone Troopers versus Battle Droids battle pack for $30, so just for a few more dollars, like $7 more, we would get so much more factored into a set like that, so I'm a little bit mixed. I don't really know how I feel about this one, but honestly, I do think the minifigures are fantastic. If only this was only $20, and I remember back when battle packs were like 12 or 15, so how the mighty have fallen. With that, we have summed up our look at the brand new wave of LEGO Star Wars coming out on June 1st, and let me know in the comments, what do you think of these sets? I'm really curious if folks like them, if you dislike them. What do you think about the U-Wing? How does that compare to the original for you? And what do you think of all the minifigures included in this wave as well? Once again, thank you to LEGO for sending me these sets early for review, although of course all the opinions expressed in this video are mine, and again, it is a little bit strange how the review embargo for this was on arrival, given that I don't know if all of these have been reviewed yet, but listen, I'm just going off of what was emailed to me, so hopefully you enjoy this review, and thank you so much for tuning into Duckworks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.